It was early evening when Kaysen stepped through the door of their modest two-bedroom home, the familiar creak of the hinges echoing through the quiet. He carried a takeout bag in one hand and a weary look in his eyes. The air smelled faintly of lavender from the candle Priscilla always lit around this hour, one of the small routines they used to share with silent affection. "Hey, Priscilla," Kaysen called gently, kicking off his shoes. "Brought Thai, your favorite, green curry, extra basil." From the living room came her voice, flat and distant. "I already ate." Kaysen paused in the hallway. "Oh, thought you said you were craving it." "I was," Priscilla replied, not looking up from the glossy fashion magazine spread across her lap. "But you were late." Again, Kaysen didn't argue. He never did. Instead, he set the food on the counter and walked over, crouching slightly beside the armrest of the couch. "I'm sorry. We had an audit deadline. I didn't want to bring the stress home." "You already did," she said, snapping the magazine shut. Her eyes didn't meet his. "Every day you come home with that exhausted look, like you're dragging yourself through life." Kaysen forced a chuckle. "It's work, babe. That's kind of the deal. We grind, we build. It'll all pay off." She finally looked at him, and for the first time in a long while, he saw not warmth or patience, but distance. "That's the thing, Kaysen. I don't see anything building." The silence between them stretched like taut wire. Kaysen stood, brushing his jeans nervously. "You used to love how grounded we were. No pretense, no games. Just us. I used to believe in the future you talked about. Now all I see is this." She gestured around the living room, the beige walls, the scuffed wooden floors, the faint buzz of the refrigerator kicking in. "We're stuck." He didn't know how to respond, so he nodded. Then he quietly went to the kitchen, scooped some curry into a bowl, and ate standing up. Later that week, Priscilla met Romeo at a charity gala hosted by her design firm. Kaysen had declined the invitation, buried in late hours at the firm where he worked as a financial consultant. He rarely said no to her, but he had that night. Romeo hardly arrived like a gust of wind, smooth, confident, tall, with a polished smile that made people want to lean in when he spoke. He was the type of man whose presence filled the room without trying, and he noticed Priscilla immediately. "You're wearing that dress like it was stitched onto your soul," he said, handing her a glass of champagne. Priscilla blinked, a little flustered. "That's poetic. I have my moments." Romeo raised his glass. "To beauty when it's unspoken." She laughed, brushing a curl from her cheek. "Do you always talk like this?" "Only when the moment demands it." Priscilla hadn't blushed like that in years. Not even Kaysen's eyes had lingered on her like Romeo's did tonight. She found herself looking for him throughout the night, her mind half listening to conversations while tracking the way Romeo moved effortlessly between people, commanding attention. There was a quiet envy in watching someone so sure of himself. When he found her again near the balcony, she didn't protest. Over the next few weeks, the atmosphere in Kaysen and Priscilla's home shifted. It was in the silence between conversations, in a way Priscilla now turned her body slightly away from him in bed, always just out of reach, and how she started going out more, networking events, team dinners, spa weekends with coworkers. One night, Kaysen returned home to find her dressed in a red evening dress he hadn't seen before. "You look incredible," he said, genuine warmth in his voice. Priscilla didn't pause as she fastened an earring. "Thanks. Romeo's hosting a rooftop mixer tonight." "Romeo," Kaysen echoed. "That the guy from your firm?" "CEO's son. He's well-connected. Helps the firm with clients." Kaysen nodded slowly. "Didn't know you two were that close." Priscilla's smile was unreadable. "I'm networking, Kaysen. It's what ambitious people do." The word stung. She didn't even look back as she walked out. In private moments, Kaysen caught himself remembering the little things. The way they used to slow dance in the kitchen on lazy Sunday mornings. The morning pancakes with smiley faces made of blueberries. Her laughter back when it was still real. Now everything felt like it was on a tight schedule, like even her attention had a timer. He tried to reconnect, planned a weekend getaway, reserve a spot at her favorite winery, but she declined. "Deadlines, Kaysen. I can't just drop everything for a random weekend." "It's our anniversary," he reminded her quietly. Priscilla sighed, not unkindly, but with that particular tone that said she had already emotionally checked out. We can celebrate later. They never did. One night, after she returned from another late outing, Kaysen lay in bed pretending to be asleep. He listened as she slipped off her heels and padded softly to the bathroom. Her phone buzzed. She didn't silence it fast enough. Romeo, how to stop myself from kissing you tonight. Still want to? Kaysen stared at the ceiling, heart clenched but body still. He didn't move, didn't speak. Something cracked deep inside him, quiet and clean. Priscilla came to bed minutes later, lying beside him as if nothing had changed. Her breathing slowed until she slept. But Kaysen stayed awake the entire night. They had dinner the next day in silence. Priscilla stirred her salad without eating. Kaysen pushed his food around the plate. I was thinking, she said at last, we might benefit from some space. Space. Kaysen's voice was careful. Just to think, reevaluate. Kaysen nodded slowly, eyes on his untouched fork. You already made your decision, didn't you? She said nothing. He looked at her for a long time. What happened to us, Priscilla? Her lips parted, then closed again. I don't know. Maybe nothing happened. Maybe that's the problem. They sat in silence for another few minutes. Then Priscilla stood and left the table, leaving her plate and Kaysen cold. The affair didn't start with a kiss. It began with stolen glances across office spaces, shared jokes over conference calls, and drinks after late-night project reviews. Romeo had a way of leaning in just a little too close, his cologne lingering longer than it should have, his fingers brushing against hers under the guise of handing over a folder. He didn't push, not at first. He didn't need to. Priscilla came willingly. She told herself it wasn't wrong. Not really. Kaysen was always tired, always working, always building. But building what? The life they had was frozen in routine, anchored in bills and budget meals. Romeo, on the other hand, was momentum. He was laughter and tailored suits, fine whiskey, invitations to rooftop lounges. With him, she felt radiant again, seen. You don't talk about him much, Romeo said one evening as they sat at a high-end tapas bar overlooking the city. Priscilla swirled the wine in her glass, eyes lingering on the red velvet across the rim. There's not much to say. Romeo arched a brow. You married him. I was younger. We were different people then. He leaned in, voice smooth and casual. Let me guess, he was sweet, idealistic, thought love would conquer all. She gave a dry laugh. Close. He had a vision. Said he didn't want to live off anyone's money. Wanted to build something from scratch. So we've been scratching ever since. Romeo smirked. Noble. Or naive. Priscilla looked away but didn't disagree. At home, Kaysen noticed the changes like shadows creeping under the door. Priscilla's laughter was softer now, tinged with something he couldn't place. Her phone stayed glued to her hand. She took extra care with her appearance, nothing drastic, but enough to make Kaysen notice. One night, while folding laundry, Kaysen found a shirt he didn't recognize. Men's. Designer. Buried beneath her dry cleaning. He held it up, confused. Hey, Priscilla, is this yours? She glanced up from her laptop, expression unreadable. Oh, no, that must be from the office. Romeo loaned me his blazer one night when I spilled something. Maybe the cleaner mixed it up. Kaysen folded it back silently, but unease planted itself in his gut. Romeo was bold behind closed doors. I don't know how you do it, he told Priscilla one night, brushing her hair back from her cheek as they lay on the silk couch in his downtown condo. Going home to that little box of a life after tasting this. She shifted uncomfortably, staring at the city lights. Don't talk about him like that. He chuckled. Why not? Poor guy doesn't have a clue, does he? She said nothing, heart pounding. She hadn't crossed that line yet, not entirely, but it was getting harder to lie to herself. Romeo didn't stop. You deserve more, Priscilla, you know that. You walk into a room like you were born for marble floors, not tile. Priscilla laughed nervously. That's a cheesy line, even for you. Cheesy doesn't mean wrong. He reached over and rested a hand on her knee, thumb brushing slow circles. Leave him. We both know this is real. She stiffened. It's not that simple. Romeo's gaze darkened. It is. You just don't want to admit it. Kaysen tried. He really did. He brought home flowers, sunflowers, her favorite. He took her to that little Italian bistro where they had their third date. He asked her about her work, her stress, her goals. Priscilla smiled, gave short answers, nodded. But her eyes were always elsewhere. One night, over dinner, Kaysen reached across the table and took her hand. "You've been distant lately. Are we okay?" Priscilla paused, setting down her fork. "I'm just overwhelmed. Romeo's been pushing us to meet insane deadlines." "Romeo again," Kaysen said before he could stop himself. She pulled her hand away. "What's that supposed to mean?" He shook his head, backtracking. "Nothing. Just you mention him a lot." "Well, he's my boss." "You never mentioned your last boss this much." Priscilla stood abruptly. "You know what? I don't need this tonight." She left the table without finishing her meal. The first time it happened, really happened, was after a gallery opening Romeo had invited her to. Priscilla wore a backless black dress and diamond earrings on loan from his private collection. The champagne flowed too easily. Romeo's hand found the small of her back too often, and when the driver dropped them at his penthouse afterward, she didn't say no when he offered a drink, or when he touched her face, or when he kissed her, or when she kissed him back. She cried in the shower that night, hot water running over her skin, scalding away the guilt she couldn't voice. She told herself it was a mistake, that she'd ended, that it was a moment of weakness. But when Romeo called her the next day, she answered, and when he asked when he'd see her again, she told him Thursday. Romeo treated her like a prize, like something he had earned. At dinners with his elite friends, he introduced her as the next queen of the Hartley legacy. He whispered crude jokes about her husband into her ear when no one was looking. "I don't know how he keeps up," Romeo said once with a smirk. "You come alive in ways I doubt he's even seen." Priscilla laughed politely, but a piece of her recoiled inside. She knew she was changing, becoming someone she might not recognize in a mirror. Kaysen started working late too, using the silence of empty office nights to distract himself from the hollowness back home. But he still made an effort, texted her during the day, left notes in her purse, kissed her good morning. He remembered when she used to kiss him back with both hands on his face. Now her lips barely moved. One night, as they lay in bed back to back, Kaysen whispered, "I miss you." Priscilla closed her eyes. "So much," he added. She didn't respond. She didn't know how to say the truth. That part of her missed him too, but more of her wanted what Romeo gave her. Power, excitement, attention. She didn't love Romeo, not really. But he made her feel wanted in a way that Kaysen's steady, quiet love didn't anymore. She reached for her phone beneath the pillow and dimmed the screen before opening the last message. "Romeo, he's just the road you took to find me." The morning sun filtered through gauzy curtains, painting the bedroom in soft amber hues. Priscilla stood near the dresser, fully dressed in a tailored blouse and skirt, her expression stiff and unreadable. In her hand, she clutched a manila envelope, edges creased from the tension in her fingers. Kaysen stirred awake, blinking against the light. His eyes met hers immediately. "You're dressed early," he said, voice still rough with sleep. He smiled faintly. "Big meeting today?" She didn't return the smile. "We need to talk." Those 4 words froze the air between them. Kaysen sat up, concern blooming in his chest. "What's wrong?" Priscilla stepped forward, the envelope held out like a loaded weapon. "This isn't working anymore." He looked at it, not yet reaching. "What is that?" "Divorce papers." Kaysen stared. His breath stalled. The room went silent, save for the distant ticking of the wall clock. "Priscilla, what?" "I've already signed," she said, her voice cool, deliberate. "You just need to read and sign at your convenience. My attorney will handle the rest." Kaysen took the envelope slowly, as if it might bite. "This isn't a conversation. This is an ambush. I've been unhappy for a long time," she replied, crossing her arms. "You've known that." "Yeah, but this—" He held up the envelope. "You didn't even try to fix it. We didn't go to counseling. We didn't talk. You just decided." "I'm tired of pretending," she snapped. "We're going in different directions. I've changed. I want more out of life." Kaysen's jaw tightened. "More what?" "More ambition. More excitement. More than scraping by while you build something from scratch that never seems to materialize." He flinched. "You knew who I was when you married me." "I thought I did," she said coldly. I thought your humility was charming. But it's just stagnation, Kaysen. I want a partner who pushes forward, not one who hides from the world. Kaysen felt like the floor was giving out beneath him. So that's it? Just like that. There's no easy way to say it, Priscilla said, picking up her purse. I've met someone. His name's Romeo. I know who he is. Kaysen's voice cut in, sharp and low. Her eyes narrowed. Then you understand why this makes sense. Kaysen's gaze hardened. You think jumping into someone else's arms while we were still married is making sense? I didn't cheat, she lied too quickly. Kaysen said nothing. He simply stared at her until she looked away. Later that afternoon, Kaysen sat at the kitchen table, the divorce papers spread out before him. The sun had shifted, casting longer shadows across the tiled floor. His coffee sat untouched. He read every clause, every line, slowly and carefully, like reading the obituary of something he used to believe in. No demands for alimony. She didn't need it. Romeo had money. No attempts to split assets down to the last cent, clean and cold, like a business transaction. She wanted to leave clean, free, triumphant. The front door creaked open. Priscilla stepped in, trailed by Romeo. Kaysen stood up. Romeo smirked. Hey, bud. Hope we're not interrupting. Priscilla walked ahead, not meeting Kaysen's eyes. I just came to pick up some clothes. I didn't expect you to be here. Romeo wandered through the living room, hands in his pockets. You've got a quaint little place here. Cozy. A bit humble. Kaysen said nothing. Romeo eyed a framed photo on the shelf, one of Kaysen and Priscilla on their honeymoon, smiles bright, arms around each other on a beach in Bali. Must have been a good year. Priscilla's tone was quick, biting. Romeo, come on. Romeo grinned. What? Just making conversation. I admire the minimalist lifestyle. Not everyone's cut out for the finer things. Kaysen's fists clenched at his sides. Still, he stayed quiet. Priscilla grabbed a suitcase and began throwing in clothes with mechanical detachment. Silk blouses, cocktail dresses, designer heels Kaysen never recognized anymore. He watched in silence. I hope you find what you're looking for, he said finally, voice steady. Priscilla hesitated only a moment. I already have. Romeo flashed a smug smile. Smart woman. She deserves better, you know. Kaysen nodded, the faintest trace of a smirk touching his lips. Maybe she does. Don't worry, Romeo added, slapping Kaysen lightly on the shoulder. We'll send you an invite to the wedding. Or maybe not. Kinda exclusive crowd. Priscilla sighed. Romeo, let's go. Kaysen stepped aside, letting her pass without another word. As she wheeled her suitcase out the door, she didn't look back. That night, the house felt cavernous. Quiet. Kaysen wandered through each room like a ghost revisiting old memories. The scent of her perfume lingered faintly in the bedroom. Her lipstick-stained coffee mugs sat in the sink. Her books still lined the shelf in the office. He picked up one of her scarves from the couch, pressed it to his face, and closed his eyes. She was gone, and she didn't just leave, she chose someone else. He remembered the nights he held her through storms, the anniversary dinners he planned with care, the way he'd supported her when her mother passed away. All of it reduced to dust under her stilettos as she walked out the door with a man who called him Bud and ridiculed their home. He sat down on the floor in the hallway, leaning his head against the wall, his mind spinning. She didn't know. She had no idea that the modest man she left was the only son of Richard Callahan, CEO of Callahan Global Holdings, one of the most powerful conglomerates on the Eastern Seaboard. That Kaysen had deliberately taken a modest job at a small firm to prove he could earn his way without riding his father's coattails. That her new wealthy boyfriend Romeo was just a middle-tier executive son from a company his father's company was preparing to acquire. Kaysen didn't say a word. He didn't need to. He signed the divorce papers the next morning. Neat. Precise. Final. Then, just as quietly, he disappeared from Priscilla's life. No texts, no calls, no social media, no forwarding address. As far as she could see, Kaysen was gone, faded into the rear view like an old chapter in a story she believed she had outgrown. And in her mind, she had upgraded. It had been nearly 6 months since Kaysen vanished from Priscilla's world. 6 months of silence, of recalibration, of transformation. He no longer dressed in plain button-downs and frayed denim. His hair, once tousled and boyish, was now sharply parted, slicked back with confident precision. His jaw, once softened by weariness, now held a clean shave and a firm, impenetrable edge. The man who stood in the 47th floor lobby of Caldwell Global Holdings was not the man Priscilla had divorced. He was something else entirely. "Mr. Caldwell is expecting you," the receptionist said with a nervous smile. Kaysen nodded. "Thank you." The elevator doors opened with a smooth chime, and Kaysen stepped inside. As the metal doors slid shut, he caught his reflection in the polished surface. Calm, composed, deadly. By the time the elevator reached the executive suite, Richard Caldwell, his father, was already waiting outside his office. "Look at you," the older man said, arms spread wide, grinning. "Finally decided to come home." Kaysen smiled and embraced him. It was time. Damn right it was. "You've earned this, son." Executive Vice President. Full oversight of acquisitions and international strategy. He gave Kaysen a firm pat on the back. "You still want to do this your way?" Kaysen nodded. Quietly for now. Richard chuckled. Spoken like a true shark. That same morning, Priscilla strutted into the lobby of Caldwell Global, her designer heels clicking confidently across the marble. Romeo walked beside her, sunglasses still on indoors, designer briefcase in hand. They looked like power, or at least they believed they did. "I've got a meeting with Global Partnerships today," Romeo said smugly. "The old man's finally noticing my pitch work." Priscilla smirked. "He's lucky to have you." "Oh, I know. You too. They're already talking about you leading the East Coast retail branch next quarter." As they reached the center of the expansive lobby, Priscilla suddenly froze. Romeo followed her gaze and saw him. Kaysen, standing by the grand elevator banks. Leaner, sharper, wearing a charcoal Tom Ford suit that fit like it was molded to his frame. Gold cufflinks, black leather shoes that glistened under the lights. He looked like a man born into dominance. Priscilla narrowed her eyes, then chuckled. Well, well, look who crawled out of the ditch." Kaysen turned at the sound of her voice. His expression was unreadable. "You lost," she said mockingly. "Or did someone mistake the lobby for a food bank?" Romeo joined in, eyes glinting. "I thought this place had a security policy. Poor men aren't allowed past the glass." Kaysen stared at them both, then gave the faintest smirk. "I built the floor you're about to fall through." Romeo blinked. "What?" Just then, the elevator beside them opened, and out walked Richard Caldwell himself, flanked by two senior executives. "Kaysen," Richard boomed, extending a hand. "Ready to get started?" Kaysen shook it. "Absolutely, Dad." Priscilla's heart stopped. Romeo's jaw dropped. "Dad." Richard turned his gaze toward Romeo, suddenly cold. "Ah, you must be the Hartley kid, the one with the nonsense pitch about international boutique franchising." Romeo straightened, tried to recover. "Yes, sir." "Ah, you're fired." Silence. Priscilla's lips parted, stunned. "What?" "You heard me," Richard said. "You think I don't know how you've been using your father's name to strong-arm junior staff? Or that you walked into my building mocking my son?" He turned to Kaysen. "Honestly, I should have let you deal with this personally." Romeo stepped forward. "Wait, sir, this has to be some mistake." Kaysen stepped in, his voice calm but glacial. "You made the mistake, Romeo, thinking I was beneath you, treating people like accessories. You see the marble, the glass, the staff, this is my house. And you just insulted the owner." Richard gave a lazy nod to security. Two suited guards appeared behind Romeo. Escort him out. Romeo's face twisted in panic. "Priscilla, say something." Priscilla was frozen, pale, speechless. Romeo struggled as the guards took him by the arms. "You're nothing without me, Priscilla. You think he'll take you back? He's just trying to embarrass us." Kaysen watched him disappear through the front doors. Then he looked at Priscilla. She was trembling slightly, her carefully sculpted confidence shattered. "You lied," she said, voice brittle. "All this time. You pretended to be ordinary." "I never lied," Kaysen said flatly. "I just didn't flaunt what I had. I thought you were broke." "You wanted to believe that," he replied, "because it gave you a reason, an excuse, to betray." Priscilla's eyes burned, not with anger but shame. "Your executive EP?" He nodded. Her voice fell to a whisper. Why didn't you tell me? Kaysen tilted his head, studying her. Because the woman I married didn't care about money. The woman I divorced did. Priscilla flinched like he'd slapped her. Around them, employees passed by, murmuring in confusion and curiosity. Priscilla realized how exposed she was. The lobby, the whispers, the public shame. She swallowed hard. Kaysen, I didn't know. No, he said, walking past her toward the elevator. But you showed me everything I needed to. The doors opened. Kaysen stepped in. As they closed, his eyes met hers one last time. Then he was gone, and Priscilla was left standing alone in the lobby, heels suddenly too high, silence too loud. The sun hadn't even reached its peak when Romeo Hartley's world came crashing down. His company ID was deactivated within the hour. Security had escorted him out of Caldwell Global's sleek glass lobby, while dozens of employees watched in stunned silence or concealed smirks. The shine of his $2,000 loafers was dulled by the concrete as he stumbled to the curb, his face flushed with rage. Priscilla caught up to him moments later outside. Romeo, she called, heels clicking rapidly. Romeo, wait. He turned sharply, jaw clenched. You just stood there. I didn't know what to say. You froze up like a damn idiot. He ran a hand through his hair. Do you know what you cost me? Her brows knit in confusion. Me? You were the one mouthing off in the lobby. I didn't know he was his son. You were married to that loser. You should have told me. I didn't know. Romeo. He scoffed and threw his hands up. Perfect. Just perfect. I lose my job, my reputation, and the future my father lined up for me because you couldn't keep your past in check. Priscilla's mouth parted, stunned by the venom in his tone. Romeo, don't talk to me like that. But he was already turning away, muttering curses as he stormed off toward the parking lot. Priscilla stood frozen on the sidewalk, her cheeks burning. Her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. A strange hollowness settled in her stomach. For the first time, she felt the ground slipping beneath her. Later that evening, Priscilla sat alone at the small apartment she and Romeo had hurriedly moved into after his firing. The penthouse he'd bragged about leasing? Gone the same day Caldwell Global revoked his credentials. His father's connections? Useless now that Richard Caldwell had blacklisted him from all partner firms. Priscilla sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the black TV screen. Her hands twisted together in her lap. She hadn't spoken to Kaysen since the lobby confrontation, but his words rang in her ears, cold and precise. You wanted to believe that, because it gave you a reason to betray. A knock at the door broke her trance. Romeo entered, his shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot. He smelled like cheap whiskey. You been drinking? Yeah, he snapped, kicking off his shoes. Because when a man gets destroyed in one day, he deserves a goddamn drink. Priscilla stood, nervous. We need to talk. This can't keep happening. Romeo sneered. You want to talk now? Suddenly you're the reasonable one. I made a mistake, she whispered. Romeo barked a laugh. You think? I should never have left Kaysen. He turned to her sharply. Don't say his name. I'm serious. I didn't see it then, but now, he was the only one who ever really loved me. Romeo's lip curled. You're pathetic. Priscilla stepped back. Don't talk to me like that. You're whining over the man you cheated on? The one you mocked in public? And now, what, you want to crawl back to him? After everything? I never said I wanted him back, she lied. Bullshit. He took a step closer. You'd throw me under the bus in a second if he crooked his finger. Priscilla stared at him, her voice low and trembling. You're not the man I thought you were. Romeo grinned cruelly. Neither are you. Then he shoved past her into the bedroom, slamming the door. The next morning, Priscilla sat outside Caldwell Global in her car, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Her palms were sweaty. Her heart thudded against her ribs. She had no appointment, no invitation, just hope. She waited an hour, then two. Then, just as she was about to give up, she saw him. Kaysen exited the revolving doors, flanked by two associates. He looked sharp, tailored suit, expression unreadable. Calm, commanding. Priscilla jumped out of her car. Kaysen, she called. He paused, then turned. Please, she said, approaching him. I need to talk to you. He signaled to his colleagues, who stepped away silently. Priscilla stood in front of him, suddenly unsure what to say. Her throat tightened. "I was wrong," she blurted. "About everything." Kaysen didn't speak. "I thought I knew what I wanted. I thought money and ambition would make me happy. But I didn't realize I had everything I needed when I was with you." Kaysen's face remained still. Priscilla's voice broke. "You loved me when I was nothing, when I was broken, and I threw it away for someone who only ever loved himself." Tears welled in her eyes. "Romeo's cruel, angry. He blames me for everything. I don't feel safe anymore." Kaysen exhaled slowly. "I'm not asking for anything," she whispered. "I just needed you to know I regret everything. I would do anything to fix what I broke." She reached out and touched his sleeve. He gently pulled away. "Regret," he said coldly, "doesn't erase betrayal." "Kaysen, please. You left because you thought I was beneath you. You laughed at me in front of the people I now lead." His eyes met hers, unwavering. "You didn't choose wrong. You chose exactly who you are." Priscilla flinched as if slapped. "I was a mistake," he continued, "and I won't make it again." Then he walked past her without another word. Priscilla stood there, shoulders trembling. Her mascara ran down her cheeks as she watched him disappear into a black company car, never once looking back. That night, she returned to the apartment. Romeo was sitting in the living room, drink in hand, watching sports with the volume too loud. He didn't look at her when she came in. "Where were you?" he asked. She didn't answer. "I asked you a question." She finally turned. "I went to see Kaysen." Romeo stood, eyes flaring. "You what?" "I had to. I needed closure." "Closure?" He laughed bitterly. "You mean you begged him to take you back?" She said nothing. Romeo's smile twisted. "You think he'll save you from me now? You think he's your white knight?" Priscilla backed toward the bedroom. "I think you need help." "You're not going anywhere," he snarled. "I don't belong here," she whispered. "You belong exactly where your choices put you." She closed the door behind her and locked it. And for the first time, she truly understood what it meant to be trapped by pride, by decisions, and by the lies she'd once told herself. Kaysen Caldwell didn't believe in rage without reason. He believed in precision, clean, deliberate action. He didn't scream. He didn't gloat. He planned. The morning after Priscilla's pitiful plea outside Caldwell Global, Kaysen sat in his corner office overlooking the skyline. The glass walls gleamed with light, but he was focused on the thick folder open on his desk. Inside, full documentation of Romeo Hartley's financial dealings, corporate affiliations, backdoor deals, and HR complaints swept under the rug by his CEO father over the years. His legal team had compiled it quietly over the last 2 months. Kaysen tapped the cover once, then spoke calmly into the intercom. "Send it." "Right away, sir," his assistant replied. Within the hour, confidential packets reached 3 major law firms, 2 corporate boards, and 1 local news outlet known for shredding corrupt elites. By noon, Romeo Hartley's name was trending for all the wrong reasons. The fallout began fast. Hartley Industries' stock dipped 12% by mid-afternoon. Romeo's father, blindsided, held an emergency press conference, distancing himself from his son's unauthorized behavior. By evening, the board voted Romeo out of any future inheritance stake. Kaysen watched it unfold with the detached calm of a surgeon. Every blow was surgical, evidence dropped just at the right time, sources carefully cited, paper trails traced with pristine clarity. But it wasn't just Romeo. Priscilla was next. He started small, a call to her alma mater, where she'd been shortlisted to speak at an upcoming alumni event, led to her invitation being quietly revoked. A change in program, they told her. No explanation. Then her social circles began to shrink. Kaysen had once been the man standing silently behind her at parties, watching as Priscilla laughed with her upscale girlfriends, pretending she belonged in their world. Now he made sure they all knew the truth. One by one, her so-called friends received anonymous emails. Screenshots of messages, flirtations between her and Romeo while she was still married. Time-stamped receipts. Photos from a hidden hotel camera. Some recoiled in silence. Others forwarded it further. Within 2 days, her phone buzzed with empty invitations, unsubscribes from group chats, vague apologies, or worse. Total silence. By the 3rd day, her mother called. "Priscilla, what am I seeing online?" Priscilla's voice cracked. Mom, please, you cheated on Kaysen? And now this? Priscilla, you shamed the whole family. I made a mistake. We all make mistakes, but you made a spectacle. Click. Priscilla stood in her tiny kitchen, shaking. Her hands trembled as she stared down at her phone, her reflection warped in the stainless steel toaster beside her. The once proud socialite reduced to a pariah. Meanwhile, Kaysen kept moving. He bought out the lease on the apartment building Romeo and Priscilla lived in. Through a shell corporation, of course. Then he raised the rent by 40%, knowing Romeo's severance and cut-off trust fund wouldn't cover it for long. Eviction notices would follow. Quietly, legally. Kaysen wasn't done. He tracked down the tech startup Romeo had tried to launch post-firing, backed by two old college buddies. Kaysen acquired their parent company, stripped the funding, and absorbed the intellectual property. The platform went offline the next day. Romeo lost his final escape route. At a dim dive bar on the city's edge, Romeo sat slouched in a booth, reeking of sweat and cheap scotch. His phone buzzed endlessly, angry texts from burned contacts, cease and desist letters, even a lawsuit from a former partner. Priscilla entered hesitantly. She hadn't seen him in 12 hours. She was hoping the worst was over. It wasn't. Everything's gone, Romeo muttered without looking up. The condo, the app, the funding. My name is Fing Radioactive. Priscilla slid into the booth quietly. We can start over. He slammed the glass down. You don't get it. He's erasing me. That smug bastard is burning everything I ever touched. We'll find a way, she whispered, though she sounded unsure. Romeo laughed bitterly. You really think Kaysen's done with us? I just wanted to stop. He looked at her, eyes bloodshot, voice slurred with venom. You picked me, remember? This was your brilliant plan. Now you can share the consequences. Priscilla's throat tightened. Don't blame me. You think this is about blame? Kaysen's got billions. Lawyers. A legacy. We're against him now. He leaned in, his voice dripping contempt. And you traded loyalty for lust. You made this bed. She recoiled as he leaned in, hand gripping her wrist. His voice dropped to a cold whisper. Don't expect me to go down alone. 2 days later, Priscilla opened her laptop. A video was circulating. Someone had leaked a surveillance clip, her and Romeo, kissing outside a hotel while Kaysen was supposedly out of town. It spread like wildfire across social media and private groups. She buried her face in her hands and screamed into her palms. Everything was falling apart. She had no job, no friends, no future, and now no place to hide. Kaysen stood in his high-rise office, watching the sun set behind the city skyline. His assistant entered quietly. The Hartleys are officially blacklisted from all current industry coalitions. HR confirmed that Priscilla's job prospects are non-existent. He nodded once. Thank you. Is there anything else you want me to handle, sir? Kaysen turned from the window, his expression unreadable. No, he said simply. That will be all. The door clicked shut behind her. Kaysen took one final look out over the city, his city, and allowed himself a small, measured exhale. Justice had been delivered. Not with fists, not with shouting, but with the calm, unstoppable force of a man who'd been underestimated and remembered everything. The apartment was freezing. One of the windows in the bedroom had a crack in it, and the wind slipped through like a knife. Priscilla hunched over the stove, stirring a dented pot of instant noodles. It was their third night eating the same thing. Romeo hadn't come home again. The silence in the room was thick, and the ticking clock above the fridge only made it louder. She looked down at her chipped nails, her pale reflection in the grease-smeared microwave door. This wasn't supposed to be her life. Not after everything she'd sacrificed. She thought she was upgrading, rising. Now she was barely surviving. A knock startled her. She padded across the warped linoleum floor and opened the door. Romeo stood there, reeking of cheap cologne and smoke. His shirt was half-buttoned. Lipstick, someone else's, smeared his collar. You're late, Priscilla said quietly, eyes narrowing. Don't start, he muttered, brushing past her. Where were you? Romeo flopped onto their torn couch and tossed his phone aside. Out. Don't ask questions when you don't pay rent. Her lip quivered. I made dinner. Noodles again? He scoffed. Christ, Priscilla, it's like living in a prison. Her fingers curled into fists. I gave up everything for you. No, he said coldly, without looking at her. You gave up Kaysen for me. There's a difference. Turns out you were worse at choosing men than I thought. Tears filled her eyes, but she bit her lip, refusing to cry in front of him again. Who was she? He looked at her with dead eyes. Does it matter? She had heat, class, ambition. Not tears, noodles, and broken dreams. With that, he stood up, grabbed his phone, and walked out again. He didn't come back the next day, or the day after that. 3 weeks later, eviction notices appeared on the door. Priscilla tried to contact Romeo. His phone had been disconnected. She went to his friends. None would speak to her. She applied for jobs. All rejections. She emailed her parents. No response. In desperation, she pawned her last piece of jewelry, her old engagement ring from Kaysen. The one she'd hidden after the divorce. The one she once thought she'd toss into the sea. Now, she needed it to survive. The pawn shop owner barely glanced at it. $50. It's worth more than that, she pleaded. Not anymore. By the end of the month, she was sleeping on the floor of a rundown women's shelter. The mattress smelled of mildew and regret. Every night, she stared at the ceiling, her mind looping over everything she'd said to Kaysen. The contempt in her voice, the smugness in Romeo's laugh, the way she believed she was rising when she was just burning bridges behind her. She remembered how he looked that last day at Caldwell, global, cold, distant, unreadable. Not the man she thought she knew, but that man, the one she scorned, was the only one she had ever truly felt safe with. And now, she had to face him. The lobby of Caldwell Global gleamed like a palace. Marble floors, gold trim. The receptionist didn't even try to hide her disdain when she saw Priscilla. Unwashed hair, second-hand clothes, sunken eyes. I need to see Kaysen Caldwell, Priscilla said, tried to stand tall. Do you have an appointment? The receptionist asked, voice dripping with professional coldness. No, but tell him it's Priscilla. Priscilla Hartley. The receptionist hesitated, then picked up the phone. She says it's urgent. A pause, then a nod. He'll see you. Executive floor. Priscilla's hands shook in the elevator. The ding of each passing floor sounded like a judgment. When the doors opened, she stepped onto plush carpet. The hallway was silent. Powerful. She approached the large mahogany door with the name etched in gold. Kaysen Caldwell, Executive Vice President. She knocked once. Come in, came the deep voice. She opened the door. There he was, behind the desk, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit, hair swept back, his presence powerful and calm. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. He just looked at her. Priscilla opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her lip trembled. The dam inside her cracked. Case in silence. I came to say I'm sorry. Still nothing. I was wrong. About everything. Romeo lied, used me, and left. I lost my friends, my job, my family. I have nothing. Her voice cracked again. I never stopped loving you. Kaysen didn't speak. He stood slowly, walked around the desk, and stood in front of her. His eyes locked on hers, unreadable and cold. Please, she whispered. She dropped to her knees. I was a fool. I see that now. You were kind, loyal, honest, and I spat on all of it. Her hands clutched his pant legs. Please give me another chance. A pause. Then his voice, low and calm. You love the man you thought I was beneath. She looked up, her eyes wet, desperate. I love you now, she said. No, he said coldly. You need me now. That's not the same thing. She let out a sob. Her forehead pressed against the floor, broken completely. Kaysen didn't flinch. Stay there, he said, voice like ice. That's exactly where you belong. She choked on her sobs as he stepped away, walking back toward his desk. She didn't follow, didn't move, just knelt there, crumbled in the shadow of the man she had once abandoned. Kaysen Caldwell stood at the edge of the rooftop garden of Caldwell Global, sipping coffee from a sleek ceramic cup. The skyline stretched out before him in all its glittering splendor. He looked calm, composed, but beneath that stillness was something new. Peace. For the first time in years, he felt it. Gone was the weight of betrayal. The twisted knot in his chest had slowly unraveled in the months since that final meeting with Priscilla. She hadn't come back again after that day. No more calls. No more emails. She'd vanished into the distance, faded like a bad memory. Kaysen had not just moved on. He had evolved. A soft laugh caught his attention. From behind, a warm voice called, "You always hog the best view." Kaysen turned and smiled. "Comes with the corner office." It was Macy Bennett, director of Kaysen Eating. Sharp-minded, wicked sense of humor, and someone who had never once looked at him with pity, even after his very public humiliation and equally public rise. They'd worked together for years, though she'd only recently come into his orbit more closely, first during a few strategy meetings, then late-night brainstorming sessions, and now she was here almost every morning with 2 coffees and that effortless smile. "You say that like I don't earn my way up here," Macy teased, handing him a second croissant. "You do," he replied, taking it. "Somehow." She smirked and leaned against the railing beside him. "So, big press meeting tomorrow. Ready to face the sharks?" "Always," Kaysen said. Macy studied him for a moment. "You're different lately." "Different how?" "Lighter. Like you finally stopped dragging a ghost behind you." Kaysen looked down into his coffee, then back at the skyline. "Maybe I have." Macy didn't press. She never did. She offered presence, not pressure. That was something Priscilla never understood. How silence could be stronger than shouting. After a pause, Macy said gently, "I heard about what she did. About the begging, the scene here. People talk." Kaysen's face stayed calm. "Let them." Macy tilted her head. "And you? You good?" Kaysen turned to face her, a soft smile playing on his lips. "Yeah, I'm good." She smiled back. And it wasn't the kind of smile you forced to be polite. It was real. Later that week, they went out for dinner. Not a formal date, just 2 colleagues sharing food and stories. But the conversation flowed easily. No hidden agendas. No subtle digs. Macy listened. She laughed. She didn't try to fix him. She just existed beside him like a calm sea. They sat at a quiet Italian place, tucked into a quiet street, away from the corporate noise. Kaysen twirled pasta on his fork and asked, "So, what made you stay at Caldwell Global all these years?" Macy leaned back, sipping red wine. "Honestly, people like you." He raised a brow. "You're not like the others, Kaysen. You listen. You own your mistakes. You don't walk into a room trying to prove something. You already know who you are. That's rare." Kaysen considered that, then chuckled. "You're dangerous with compliments. Only when deserved." He looked at her for a long moment. She looked back, steady. He liked that. A lot. Weeks passed. They grew closer, not in some whirlwind romance, but something richer. Macy never asked about Priscilla directly again. But when the divorce came up, she listened without judgment. One night, as they sat on his couch with glasses of wine, Macy finally asked, "Do you ever miss her?" Kaysen was quiet for a while. "I miss who I thought she was," he said finally. "But the real version? The one who left for status and forgot what love meant? No, I don't miss that." Macy nodded. "Sometimes people break in a way they can't come back from." He looked at her. "Do you think people can come back?" She met his gaze. "I think some can, but only when they want to grow, not when they're desperate to fix what they destroyed." Kaysen stared into his glass for a moment, then said quietly, "She didn't come back to apologize. She came back to escape the hole she dug." "And you didn't throw her a rope?" Macy said softly. "No, I let her sit in it." "Good." They clinked glasses. On the other side of the city, Priscilla sat on a park bench. Her coat was too thin. The coffee in her hands had long gone cold. She had heard about Kaysen's promotions. The press releases were everywhere. His face on business magazines. His quote trending. "Sometimes loss is your greatest teacher." She had also seen her. Macy. Warm, elegant, smart. They were seen together at a gala. Priscilla watched the photos roll in. The smile on Kaysen's face in those images, it wasn't just happiness. It was freedom. Priscilla swallowed the lump in her throat and looked away from the glowing screen of her borrowed phone. She had destroyed the one person who truly loved her, and there was no going back. Kaysen stepped into the morning sunlight outside the Caldwell building. Macy was already waiting with coffee, as usual. "Big meeting with the European partners," she said cheerfully. "Let's give them a show," he replied. As they walked in together, Kaysen glanced at her and said, "You know, I don't say this often, but I'm grateful." Macy smiled. "For what?" "For second chances." She looked at him, the breeze catching her hair. "You earned it." The city buzzed, as usual, alive with the early hum of morning traffic, the screech of buses, and the rhythm of hurried footsteps on pavement. The glass facade of Caldwell Global loomed high over the street, polished, flawless, and cold like the empire it housed. Priscilla stood on the opposite sidewalk. She wore a beige coat that had faded from too many winters and too little care. The once elegant heels on her feet were scuffed, the soles thinned. Her makeup was careful, but it couldn't hide the tired lines or the dullness in her eyes. She wasn't there to meet anyone. She just watched. Inside the tower's lobby, golden light poured over a marble floor. Receptionists smiled. Security officers greeted arriving executives. Clean suits, bright laughter. People who had somewhere to go, something to do. Priscilla adjusted the grip on her second-hand purse and stepped a few paces closer to the building. Close enough now that she could see her own reflection in the glossy surface of the glass doors, hollow eyes staring back. And then she saw him, Kaysen, walking through the lobby like he belonged there because now he did. Tall, confident, the weight of vengeance behind him, now shed like an old coat. His stride was measured, relaxed. There was none of the boyish meekness she'd once looked down on. He wore power like a custom-fitted suit. Next to him, Macy walked with that same effortless poise. Their conversation was quiet, but their laughter carried. Her hand brushed his arm, casual, easy. Priscilla's stomach twisted. The door slid open with a gentle whoosh as Kaysen and Macy stepped outside. He didn't see Priscilla at first. She did everything not to be noticed, but her breath caught when his eyes met hers. He stopped walking. Macy slowed, glancing between them. Priscilla held his gaze for just a second longer. She saw no hate in his eyes, no anger, no vengeance anymore. Worse, there was nothing. She was a ghost, a stranger. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Her throat was dry. Her hands trembled against the fabric of her coat. There were no tears left. She had cried them out on too many nights, in too many cheap apartments. Macy turned to Kaysen gently. "Want me to give you a moment?" He shook his head once, firm. "No need." Priscilla flinched at that. Her shoulders slumped, her chin lowered. She had once been the center of his universe. Now she was an afterthought. Kaysen took Macy's hand, casually, and they kept walking down the sidewalk. Priscilla didn't follow. She couldn't. In her mind, echoes played. Her own words. "I deserve better than this. Maybe if you were more ambitious, I wouldn't be tempted. You're just a man who'll always stay beneath the glass ceiling." Each one stabbed. And then Kaysen's voice that day in the lobby, "Enjoy the view from the bottom. I built the floor you're about to fall through." She understood it now. Kaysen hadn't just risen. He had ascended, and she had fallen hard. Romeo was long gone. After the meltdown, public, humiliating, bitter, he'd turned cruel, then violent, then absent. The rich boy had no riches of his own. Once blacklisted, he unraveled. He cheated, gambled, drank. And then one day he simply disappeared, leaving her with debts, shame, and a bruised cheekbone she still swore was just a fall. Priscilla glanced at her reflection again. But it wasn't her she saw. It was a warning. The cost of pride. A betrayal. A believing a facade over a foundation. Behind her, life moved on. Caldwell employees rushed past, ignoring her. Executives with places to be. Interns chasing elevator doors. Not a soul paused to wonder who she was. Just another person on the outside, looking in. She remembered walking through those glass doors with Romeo at her side, head held high, mocking Kaysen as if he were beneath her. "Did you come here to beg for a job, poor boy?" Poor men aren't allowed past the glass. And yet, here she was outside. Cold. Forgotten. Inside, Kaysen had rebuilt his life. She destroyed hers. At the crosswalk, Kaysen and Macy waited for the light to change. Macy glanced over her shoulder and asked, "Was that her?" He nodded once. "Yeah. You okay?" Kaysen looked ahead. More than okay. They crossed together. Priscilla watched them disappear into the crowd, swallowed up by the tide of moving life. The light turned red again. She stood alone. Inside her pocket, Priscilla's phone buzzed with another declined job application. She didn't look. She didn't have to. She turned away from the building and began to walk, one heel clicking unevenly against the pavement. There was no speech to give, no scene to cause, no last chance to plead. That day had come and gone. She had played her hand and lost everything. As she faded down the street, Kaysen's voice echoed in memory, almost like narration. Funny thing about floors, if you don't know who built them, you'll never see the fall coming. And she hadn't. Not until she was at the bottom. Looking up,